think that, Charlie Munger says that, three times in the last few decades, Berkshire lost more than half its value. And it didn't bother them. It's, irrelevant. So I think that, there was a saying I grew up with is if wealth is lost, nothing is lost. If health is lost, something is lost. And if character is lost, everything is lost. So at the end of the day, I think the way one should look at the portfolio is understand what it's worth, not understand what the markets every second are pricing it at, because the two can diverge quite a bit. And if you don't have leverage in your life, you don't have margin loans, and some asset drops 50% or 70% in price, and you don't need to sell those assets to keep the lights on, it's irrelevant for the most part, because it is in the nature of auction driven markets that you will have very wide variance between price and value. And we see that all the time. So for example, if I took all the stocks in the New York Stock Exchange, put them on a dartboard, small tickers, and I just throw darts, any stock I look at, the price range in a year would be 50 to 100 or 70 to 130. It's a wide range. If I look at the value of my home on Zillow, for example, every day for a year, it may not move more than 10%, 5%. The movement is very, very narrow, because one is an auction-driven market, and the other is a market where intelligent buyers are interacting with intelligent sellers. So auction-driven markets will always overshoot and undershoot. And it is that overshooting and undershooting that helps us make money. So I love auction-driven markets because it gives us those opportunities. But you also have to be willing to take the pain where you're holding something and it's dropped a lot in price. As long as the underlying asset is still valuable and worth a lot more, you don't have any leverage or anything else, you can just ride it out, no problem.
Yes, definitely. Another question from Danielle. As you mentioned, by purchasing Prosus, PRX, you get a stake in Tencent at a discount. Why do you think the market has not recognized this? And do you see it as a long-term compounder?
Well, I would say holding company discounts in the equity markets is a very common occurrence. It happens all the time. And I think that I was reading a transcript of one of the NASPER's calls where Koosbecker was talking. He said, look, if I own a Picasso worth 10 million, and I own a Matisse, which is also worth 10 million, and I tell you that you can buy both for me, you may be a Picasso fan, but you may not be a Matisse fan. Or you may be a Matisse fan, but not a Picasso fan. So if both are shoved down your throat, you'd say, okay, 15 million, I'll take it, right? You'd be unwilling to pay 20 million. So if you look at it from that point of view, Prosus, if you just at a high level look at it, they've got, let's say 200 billion of Tencent stock in Prosus, and they've got like the 40 billion or something in other investments, right? So 240 billion. And I think the market value may be under 150 billion. Well, part of it is it's kind of the Picasso and Matisse given to you together. Or how do you make sense of this, right? But yeah, I think that some of the parts discounts is very common in equity markets. And sometimes the market gives you things on a platter, and that can be great.
I think the reason most managers cannot beat the index is really for two reasons. One is the index doesn't have frictional costs, and the manager does. So the manager might have 1 to 3% frictional costs every year, including all the trading costs and all of that. And so they have to overcome that hurdle, which is a significant hurdle to overcome. And the second is that when we look at the stock market, something like 4% of stocks deliver almost all of the returns. So there's some studies about how S&P is done like 9% a year for 100 years. But if you took away the top 4% performers, you'd be left with nothing. And like more than half the stocks deliver negative returns long term. So basically, and again, that goes back to the creative destruction and all of that. So the thing is, the index is too dumb to know that it owns Amazon. and it owns Apple, it owns Alphabet, owns Microsoft, and owns all these companies. And it's also too dumb to ever sell these companies. And so it owns these companies. It never sells these companies. These companies keep becoming a larger and larger portion of the index. It doesn't really rebalance and such. It just sits there. Whereas the active manager, even when they're smart enough to buy Amazon, they're trying to figure out every day, should they sell it or keep it? They get in their own way. So how many people figured out Amazon and then kept it for 10 years? So there's a fund manager in Scotland, Ballygifford. And I like the Ballygifford people a lot, even though I think they're overdosed on Carvana right now. But Ballygifford, when they go in, they'll just be there, right? They try to find these great businesses, and they'll hang on for a long time. Berkshire does that, and so on. So I think the active manager, the deck is stacked against them, right? You got the frictional cost, and you basically are going to be picking 1 out of 25. Out of every 25 stocks, 1 is the winner, and so great, which is why you get even a 50% error rate. And so figuring out what these companies will do long term in the light of the creative destruction that capitalism imposes on you, it's a difficult thing to do.
As Mohnish Pabrai says, volatility is what helps investors make money. We need to understand that stock market is an auction-driven system that constantly offers opportunities to buy great businesses at attractive prices. Many a times, markets can be extremely emotional and moody in the short term, but the volatility often creates the biggest opportunities for smart investors. If we stay patient and act when the right opportunities appear, the rewards can be extraordinary over the long run.